Welcome to your 9th web scraping tutorial, and in this tutorial we're going to go over multi-threading. And the reason for multi-threading is because in the computing industry we've reached a point where processors are about as fast as they're going to get, and the only way we can get more throughput out of our programs is by parallelism. And this is a simple form of parallelism, is just distributing your processes across multiple cores. But in the future, we're going to be using the GPU for massively parallel processing, and in much later tutorials, we'll be using distributed computing systems across multiple machines. But in this tutorial, we're just going to be making separate processes and dividing our program up into multiple processes. So as you can see, I have the threads folder open, which is just a folder I made in the Python directory. And inside the threads folder, we have our symbols.txt and our threads.py. And this is just an empty file, and symbols.txt just contains about 200, let me just control F, comma, 595 different symbols. So if we go to our threads.py, we need to import the thread library. So import, or actually it's from threading, import thread, and thread is capital. And I think that everybody should have the thread library if you've downloaded the Python shell. So next we import our URL library, so import URL lib, and basically we've used that in previous tutorials, so I don't need to explain it. And next we will define a function, and the reason we're defining a function is because we need separate memory allocation for each thread. So we'll define, let's call this thread, just call it th for now, and that will take an argument, and the argument that we're giving to it is the URL of the page we want to visit. So we'll just say for now UR for URL, and then when we visit the page, what we want to do is we want to open the page. So we'll say HTML text equals URL lib dot URL open, and then inside we'll just put UR, and then we want to read this, so read, and then afterwards we can say print HTML text of the first 100 characters. Oops, 100. My keyboard might be pretty loud because it's mechanical. So print HTML text 0-100, and that's exactly what we want to do. So next we have to define our array of websites that we want to visit. So we'll say URLs equals, and then we'll just define a string. So say google.com, and then we'll say Yahoo, CNN, and Wikipedia. So we'll just say Wikipedia, Yahoo, and CNN. And then we want to convert this into a array, so an array. So we'll say .split, and I think by default it uses the space character as the default character, so we'll split that, and then we'll say for in URLs we want to create a thread. So how do we create a thread? We say t equals thread, and then inside thread we need the target function. So target equals th, and then next we need to give it some arguments. So what are we passing to this function? We need to pass it the URL, so args equals and then in parentheses we say U, and then it needs a comma because I think it takes more than one argument by default. I'm not actually sure on that, but I mean, I'm not a historian of Python. I'm just applying the Python. So t equals thread, and actually we need some data structure to store the thread objects so that we can actually join the threads after we've run everything to correctly deallocate memory. So we'll say thread list equals empty array, and then we'll say t dot start, and then we'll say thread list dot append. We'll add t to this thread list, and then we'll say after we've started all the threads, we actually have to join them back to main memory. So we'll say for b in thread list b dot join, and this should run. So let's open our Python, and then I will say, let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so now what we're going to do is say exec file threads threads/threads.py. Oh wow, that worked perfectly. It went out to our websites and it got each individual site. So now what we need to do is I'm actually going to get just the titles just to show you a few things that are necessary for multi-threading. So up here we actually need to import the regular expressions library. So import, and this is all the same stuff we've been doing in the past tutorials. So regex equals, we'll get the titles. So title dot plus question mark, and then pattern equals re dot compile regex, and then instead of printing HTML text, we'll say results equals re dot find all HTML text, actually pattern, comma, HTML text. And let's see if this works. Oh yeah, we have to print it out. So we'll say print results. Okay, so first it prints out Wikipedia, then it prints out Google, then it prints CNN, then it prints Yahoo. Let's run it again. First it prints out Google, then it prints Wikipedia, then Yahoo, then CNN. And wait, we didn't change anything in the code. Why is it printing them out in separate order? Let's try that again. Wikipedia, Google, CNN, Yahoo. That's the same as the first one. Let's try it again. Wikipedia, CNN, Yahoo. Wikipedia is first. CNN, Yahoo. So actually, in the first two times we ran it, Wikipedia was first, and then the next one, Google was first. So they're out of order, and the reason is because the threads are all separate processes, so they all finish at different times. And the reason why printing to the screen is not a very good idea when you're programming in multi-threaded, is because things will output to the screen in the order that they're executed. So if you have two processes that should output two things one after another, it might actually be intertwined with things from other threads, so your output on the screen might just be nonsensical. So in this case, we've also found that it prints things out of order. So when you're debugging things, if something happens non-deterministically, which means basically one thing can finish first or the other thing can finish first, you have no idea of knowing which thread is going to complete first, because these are making network requests, and there's really no way to figure out which one's going to finish first. So that's why multi-threaded programming is much harder, because it's non-deterministic. So here we have Yahoo Finance open again, and APL. So this is the string that we need here. Finance.yahoo q s equals APL. So let's go back to our program, and instead of going to that website, we're going to go to, actually what's changing is the symbol. This URL isn't actually changing, so we can actually put this in our function, just predefine it in there, just say base equals this URL. Actually, we don't want Apple. So next what we need to do is we need to open this symbols.txt. And something that I've noticed in here is there's spaces. So what we might have to do is maybe we could replace the blank space with empty string, just to cut out the white space. And okay, so now what we need to do is open that file. So we'll say symbols list equals open, and it's actually in the threads directory. So threads/symbols.txt, and then that's going to give us the file. Now we need to read the file, and now we get a string, and now we need to replace all of the white space. So I'll say symbols list equals symbols list dot replace empty space with empty string. So that will give us our string without any white space. So let's see if this works. Just print symbols list. Okay, so that looks like it printed out everything without any white space, which is exactly what we want. Next, I'm going to split on the comma. Let's see if that works. Yup, convert everything to an array. Perfect. Now we can put all that stuff back in. So now symbols list is essentially the same as URLs. So we can just get rid of URLs. And we want to actually pass each symbol to this function. So we'll say for you in symbols list. Whoops, I misspelled symbols. I'm not an English teacher, so T in thread will pass the symbol. So we're no longer passing URLs, we're just passing a symbol. And up here we actually have to build a URL. So base equals this, and then we can just add on UR, and that should build our URL. And then so let's give it a try. See what happens. The system cannot find file specified. Oh, I see what the problem is. URL open UR. We don't want to open the word AAPL because the computer has no idea, is AAPL a URL? Is AAPL a file? We want it to open Yahoo Finance plus the symbol. So we'll say base. Actually, I should rename it something else. Base is probably confusing, but we're only writing this code for ourselves. We're not using this code as some code we're going to distribute to other people. So now let's run this. And right now it's, oh wow, look at, it's getting all these URLs super fast. Remember before when it actually had to do one at a time, how slow it was going? Now it's moving at a pretty fast pace. Seems reasonable. Wow, it's going pretty fast. And is it done? Maybe. Maybe. Looks probably about done. So we can just kill this. Okay, so I don't know what happened. Maybe it was just hung up or something. Because if you think about it, it's making 500 requests to Yahoo at the exact same time. So maybe they were thinking we were spamming them. But I think if they thought that, they wouldn't be still serving us data. They'd probably say, like Google says, hey, you're making too many requests. Maybe you should wait a few minutes. So next, what we need to do is get the actual stock price. So we'll go back to Yahoo Finance. So finance, and we did this in the previous tutorial. It's YFS1D4 is the key for this. So we'll just grab this. And then we'll go back to our program. And we will grab YFS1E4. Plus question mark. And then instead of printing results, we will say print results. We will say print the price of comma UR comma is comma results. So this should say the price of Apple is whatever. So let's try it out. And it doesn't seem to be working. I wonder why. So let's kill this. Okay, let's just go back and see. So, there's the reason. So, we were searching for AAPL, but obviously every symbol is not Apple. So the only one of these requests that should return a result is for Apple. But we want one for every result, not just Apple. So we can say we can either say and followed by any character, or we could just say, just split our regular expression right here and say plus, oh actually we have to split with single quotes. And we can say plus UR. But in the previous tutorials, we found that we can't for uppercase letters, but we can actually convert this to a lowercase letter. So we'll say dot lower. And let's see if that works. And it does. We basically just convert everything to lowercase. And wow, look how fast this is getting all of the prices. This is much faster than before, because the first time we ran it, it would go really slowly, and it wasn't making multiple requests at the same exact time. And I think it's about done. But one thing you have to look at is, wow, why are all these strings jumbled together? And the reason is because in Python, this comma, this is the same as writing print the price of, print UR, print IS, print results. It's the same as making 5 different print statements. And the screen output, it's taking requests one after another from every single thread together. So it's going to get all jumbled together. And the reason you can, the way you can fix this is by simply adding all of these together. And we'll just convert these to strings so that we can concatenate them. Results of 0. Let's see if it should output everything in a reasonable way now instead of as a sloppy non-concatenated mess. I wonder what's taking it so long. Maybe I will just open it again. Exec file, and then we'll say threads/threads.py. And it looks to be outputting everything in a reasonable manner, except much faster than before. And we actually need a space in there. Okay, so save this. And then we can say op-d. That just printed out every symbol that we're going to get. And now it is getting us the prices much faster than before. And in a few tutorials ago, I said that we were going to get the prices faster with multi-threading, and I was actually correct. We are getting them much faster. It can do 500 symbols in 20 seconds as opposed to before we were requesting 500 things and we couldn't even finish it in the span of one video. But there's actually these errors, and the reason for this is when we go out for a certain symbol, it returns an empty array, and we're trying to actually access the 0th element of an empty array, and there's nothing there, so we can't access the 0th element. And we can actually fix that with error handling, or like do an except statement, but just for the purposes of what we're doing, this program seems to work pretty well. And it goes out and it gets all these stocks relatively quickly with multi-threading. And in the next tutorial, we're going to be storing these in a database using the MySQL DB library of Python. So thank you for watching your 9th web scraping tutorial, and follow me on Twitter.